In this video, I'm just going to give you a few tips on how to stay organized with Google Drive. The most important thing to remember is there's only ever one instance of a file. So if you choose to create a file, let's say a Google Doc, and you share that with your students or your colleagues, effectively you both have access to exactly the same Google Doc. Any edits made from any location will be reflected in the same Google Doc. When you share that file with your friends or your colleagues, that file will go into a space called Shared with Me, and I want you to think of that as a bucket, and we'll come back to that in a moment. The next thing to remember is there is only ever one owner of a file. So if I created that Google Doc and shared it with a colleague, but the next day I deleted that Google Doc, the Google Doc would be deleted from your colleague's Google Drive as well. The third thing to remember is that there is only ever one of three locations in your account where a file can live. That's either going to be My Drive, and I want you to imagine My Drive as a clothesline with pegs on it which you would peg file types to. The other space is a Shared with Me, which is like a bucket. Inside that bucket would be files and folders which have been shared with you from other users. And then there's the bin or the trash can. Inside this is where you place all of the files and folders which have been deleted, and they'll stay there until you empty the trash. The reason I use a clothesline as an analogy for My Drive is because as you create new files, new Google Docs, Microsoft Word documents and images and so forth, they're effectively all created equal. They all reside at the top level of My Drive. Now you can add those files into folders to stay organized, but a folder is really very similar to a label that you apply to an email in your Gmail inbox, for example. One of my favorite ways to search and organize my files is actually to use the search feature. If you type the word owner and then perhaps a name of one of your students or colleagues, all of the files that person owns will be listed. And if you shift click across those two files and then right click, you can move those into a folder, and I'll create a new folder. And now those two files will be added into My Drive. So if your students are sharing a lot of work with you and it starts to fill up the top level of your My Drive space and you want to get organized, use that search feature. Another way to quickly navigate to the files that you've been using is to use this smart folder here on the left hand side called Recent. So often overlooked, but this is one of my favorite spaces. It just lists all the files that I've been working on recently. Another favorite way of mine to find files is to use the search feature and use speech marks and enter the words that you're looking for. In this instance, I've searched for the word pedagogy, and every single file that contains that word is now listed. So back to the clothesline analogy, when you've got all your files hung on this particular clothesline and you can just use the search feature to find exactly what you're looking for, just remember that Shared with Me bucket is a separate space. So when people share a file with you and you choose to add it to My Drive, you effectively clip that Google Doc or whatever that file type might be into your clothesline or your My Drive. And when you delete that from your drive, remember it doesn't delete the actual document because that's owned by somebody else. It just places that document back into the Shared with Me bucket. So think of your Google Apps for Education domain at your school as just hundreds, if not thousands, of My Drive spaces, and each My Drive space has got a Shared with Me bucket. And when a file is shared with other people, you have the option to add it to your My Drive. You may also choose to place that in the bin, and the most powerful way to find those files is to use the search tips that I showed you. I hope that you found this video useful.